Christian greetings and welcome to our lesson for today, which is lesson number 59 on our series of lessons on the books of Daniel and Revelation. Today we are looking at Revelation chapter 14, verse 8, in what we will call the second angel's message. In our previous lesson, we looked at the first angel's message. It reads, "And there followed another angel, saying, Fallen, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." We're just going to analyze this verse. We're not going to read other verses today. Followed is my interest. We just read in verse 7 in the previous lesson about the first angel, and then there is another angel that followed. Here, the word used means to accompany or to follow. You can read Matthew 19, verse 27 and 28, Mark 1, verse 18, to get the sense where the word has the idea of accompanying Jesus personally. It seems to have both meanings in this text. In point of time, the second angel follows the first. But it is also true that the first angel continues his ministry when the first angel joins him. So the two then happen simultaneously. Though it's joined, they continue. In this sense, the second angel's message accompanies that of the first. Then there was the word used here, another angel. Textual evidence attests the inclusion of the word second. In some manuscripts, the word for second stands in the place of the phrase another angel. In others, as an addition to the phrase, still other manuscripts read a second angel instead of another angel, saying the first and third angel's messages are proclaimed with a loud voice. We are yet to do the third angel's message. That is verses 7 and verse 9. But today we are doing only verse 8. The message concerning the fall of Babylon is later proclaimed with a loud voice. You will come across that in Revelation 18, verse 1 and 2. Then there is the name used here of a city called Babylon. The ancient literal city by this name was already largely a desolate ruin during John's day. So it would almost boggle the mind, why is John saying this if we were to take it literally? Because during his time, this city, Babylon, no longer existed. It was already in ruins. You can read Isaiah 13, verse 19. As with so many other terms expressed and expressions in Revelation, the significance of the name, you can read Acts 3, verse 16, may best be understood in terms of the role of its historical counterpart in Old Testament times. So what I'm going to do today is to spend a little bit more time on the history about Babylon and how this phrase is used, because it is important for us to understand the background. Why years in the first century John is speaking about a city which is already in ruins? Is he speaking about a literal city, or there is some significance about what he's saying? So the designation Mystery Babylon in chapter 17, verse 5, specifically identifies the name as figurative. We need to realize that the name Babylon is used as figurative, not literal. In Babylonian, the name Babil or Babel or Babylon meant, that is to the Babylonians, it meant the gate of the gods. But the Hebrews derogatorily associated it with Balaam, a word in their language meaning to confuse. Right? You can read Genesis 11, verse 9. So The rulers of Babylon doubtless called the city as the gate of the gods, in the sense that they chose to think of it as the place where the gods consorted with men in order to the affairs of this earth. You can read in Judges 9:35, Ruth 4 verse 1, 1 Kings 22 verse 10, Jeremiah 2:22 verse 3. There's quite a few texts that speaks to that. So the name that seems to have reflected the claim of the Babylonian kings that they had been commissioned to rule the world by divine minded. Genesis 11 verse 4. Babylon was, historically we're told, was founded by Nimrod. You can read in Genesis 10 verse 10, chapter 11 verse 1 to 9. From the very beginning, the city was emblematic of disbelief in the true God and defiance of his will. You can read in Genesis 11 verse 4 to 9. And its tower, a monument to apostasy, a citadel of rebellion against God. The prophet Isaiah identifies Lucifer as the invisible king of Babylon. Look at that. So understand the context of Babylon in prophecy, not to always refer to the physical Babylon that is no longer existent. Yet towards the end of the world, or the era of time, we are told that there will be this concept of Babylon arising. But Babylon as a city no longer exists. Right? In fact, it would appear that it had been designated to make Babylon the center and agency of his master plan to secure control of the human race, even as God purposed to work through Jerusalem. Somebody said the world is, or religion is about two cities, the city of Babylon or the city of Jerusalem, because they are very significant and they are very symbolic in what the two represent in religion. Throughout Old Testament times, the two cities typified the forces of evil and good at work in the world. The founders of Babylon aspired to set up a government entirely independent of God, and had he not intervened, they would eventually have succeeded in banishing righteousness from the earth. Daniel 4 verse 17. For this reason, God saw fit to destroy the tower and to scatter its builders. Genesis 11 verse 7 and 8. A period of temporal success was followed by more than a millennia of decline and subjection to other nations. Isaiah 13 verse 1, Daniel 2 verse 37. So when Nebuchadnezzar II rebuilt Babylon, it became one of the wonders of the ancient world. His plan to make his kingdom universal and eternal, you can read Daniel 3 verse 1, chapter 4 verse 30, was a success to the extent that in splendor and power, the new Babylonian empire surpassed its predecessors. You can read chapters 2:37 and 38 and chapter 4 verse 30. However, it also became the haughty and cruel oppressor of God's people, and threatened with defeat his purpose for them as a people, as a nation. In a dramatic series of events, God humbled Nebuchadnezzar, secured the submission of his will. But his successors refused to humble themselves before God. You can read Daniel chapter 5, verse 18 to 22. And eventually the kingdom was weighed in the balances of heaven, found wanting, and its mandate revoked by the decree of the divine watcher. Daniel 5:26 to 28. For a time, Babylon became the capital of Persian Empire, but it was destroyed by its king Xerxes, Over the centuries, the city gradually lost more and more of its glitter and importance, and eventually, toward the close of the 1st century, virtually ceased to exist. You can read Isaiah 13 verse 19, Revelation 18 verse 21. Ever since the fall of ancient Babylon, Satan has sought through a one-world power from another after another to control the world, and would probably long since have succeeded had it not been repeated instances of divine intervention. So God at all time intervenes to stop the plan and thwart the plans of the devil. Without doubt, his most audacious and nearly successful attempt had been through the papacy, especially during the Middle Ages. Daniel 7 verse 25, but God intervened to prevent the success of each subsequent threat to the ultimate accomplishment of his purposes. You can read Revelation 12 verses 5, 8 and 16. And the nations have never been able to cleave together, as the Bible prophecy told us in Daniel 2 verse 43. Evil is inherently divisive. However, near the end of time, Satan will be permitted to achieve what appears briefly to be a success. Revelation 16 verse 13, 14, 16, and chapter 17 verse 12 to 14. It does tell us that this attempt again, because the devil never gives up. He is tenacious in his plan. He will once again come back and want to have control. Apparently, towards the close of the century AD, Christians were already referring to the city of Empire of Rome by the cryptic title Babylon. Read 1 Peter 5 verse 13. This I'm not coining up, I'm not making it up. It historically, I'm going to give you a little more history by the writers or Christians during those eras. By the time the once magnificent literal city of Babylon lay almost, if not altogether, in ruins, an uninhabited waste, and thus a graphic illustration of the impending fate of mystical Babylon, the Jews were suffering as never before under the merciless hand of Rome, even as they had once suffered under Babylon. And Christians also experienced repeated sporadic persecution at her hand. Among Jews and Christians alike, Babylon thus became an appropriate and incriminating term to describe imperial Rome. During the early Christian centuries, the cryptic designation Babylon for the city and empire of Rome appears common in both Jews and Christian literature. I've got quite a number of these that I may read, but I won't read all of them. I'll read maybe some of them. Babylon, both literally and mystically, has thus long been recognized as the traditional enemy of God's truth and people. As used in the Revelation, the name is symbolic of all apostate religious organizations and their leadership, from antiquity down to the close of time. A comparison of the many passages of the Old Testament where the scene's fate of literal Babylon are set forth at length with those in Revelation descriptive of mystical Babylon makes evident the appropriateness of figurative application of the name. A perusal of these and other passages reveals the importance also of a thorough study of the Old Testament with respect to literal Babylon as a background for understanding the import of New Testament passages relating to mystical Babylon. Then in the verse we read, there is the repeat of the word is fallen, is fallen. Textual evidence may be cited for the omission of the second is fallen. The passage seems to echo Isaiah 2:21 verse 9, where the LXX textual evidence is divided between reading is fallen as once or twice. The Hebrew repeats the term. repetition lends emphasis to the message. Babylon is a comprehensive term that John employs to describe all religious bodies and movements that have fallen away from the truth. This fact requires us to view this fall as progressive and cumulative. This prophecy of the fall of Babylon finds its fulfillment in the departure of Protestantism at large from the purity and simplicity of the gospel. Revelation 14 verse 4. Historically, the message was first preached by the Advent movement, known as the Millerite movement, in the summer of 1844, and was applied to the churches that rejected the first angel's message concerning the judgment. You can read verse 7. The message will have increasing relevance as the end draws near and will meet its complete fulfillment with the union of the various religious developments under the leadership of Satan himself. The message of chapter 18 verse 2 to 4 announces the complete downfall of Babylon and calls upon God's people who are scattered throughout various religious bodies comprising Babylon to separate from them. That is why God says, "Come out of here, my people," because God has his people in different churches who need to hear this truth about the apostate churches that have apostatized and have left the truth. The verse we read also talks about that great city, referring to Babylon. The adjective here used, great, is applied to Babylon consistently throughout the book of Revelation. You can read chapter 16, 19, chapter 17, 5, and chapter 18, verses 2, 10, and 21. It also tells us that the great city, it refers to all nations. The universal nature of the apostasy is here described. Hence the phrase all nations. The substitution of human laws for the laws of God and the enforcement of religious decrees by the state will become universal. We are also told this great city made the people drink. A figure describing the acceptance of false teachings and policies of Babylon. Cohesion is suggested in the phrase made all nations drink. It will be by cohesion. It will be by force. Religious elements will bring pressure to bear upon the state to enforce their decrees, cause all the people to drink, and then the wine of the wrath. The figure is borrowed from Jeremiah 25 verse 15, where Jeremiah is bidden to take the wine cup of this fury and cause all nations to drink it. But wrath is not Babylon's object in offering the wine to the various nations. She contends that drinking of her wine will bring peace to nations. Revelation 13 verse 12. However, the drinking of it brings down on men the wrath of God. Some suggest that the word here translated with wrath should be rendered passion. The passage could then be translated, she caused all nations to drink the wine of her passionate immorality. However, elsewhere in the Revelation, this word seems to have the meaning anger or wrath, and that meaning should probably be adopted here also. And then the last word used in the verse we read, which is verse 8, was fornication, a figure of the illicit connection between the church and the world, or between the church and the state. The church should be married to her Lord, but when she seeks the support of the state, she leaves her lawful spouse, who is her Lord. By her new connection, she commits spiritual fornication. That's where fornication comes in that instead of being married to her Lord, she chooses to marry the state. You can compare Ezekiel 16 verse 15 and James 4 verse 4. That gives that context. Friends, The great sin charged against Babylon is that she made all nations drink of the wine of her wrath, of her fornication. This cup of intoxication which she presents to the world represents the false doctrines that she has accepted as the result of her unlawful connection with great ones of this earth. Friendship with the world corrupts her faith, and in her turn, she exerts corrupting influence upon the world by teaching doctrines which are opposed to the plainest statements of the holy writings. Rome withheld the Bible historically from the people, and required all men to accept the teachings in its place, to enforce people to observe her traditions. It was the work of reformation to restore to men the word of God. But is it not too true that the churches of our time, men are taught to rest their faith upon their creed and teachings of their church rather than on the scriptures? It is true. They shrink from any rude word against creeds with the same sensitiveness with which those holy fathers would have shrunk from the rude word against the rising veneration of saints and martyrs which they were fostering. The Protestant evangelical denominations have so tied up one another's hands with their own that between them all a man cannot preach at all anywhere without accepting some book besides the Bible. This is what we have experienced throughout the ages. There is nothing imaginary in this statement that the creed power is now beginning to prohibit the Bible as really as Rome did, though in a subtle way. God denounces Babylon because she made all nations drink of the wine of her wrath of fornication. This means that she has disregarded the only commandment which points out the true God, and has torn down the Sabbath, God's memorial of creation. God made this world in 6 literal days and rested on the 7th, sanctifying this day and setting it apart from all others as holy to himself, to be observed by his people throughout their generations. But the man of sin, exalting himself above God, sitting in the temple of God and showing himself to be God, thought to change times and laws, this power, thinking to prove that it was not only equal to God but above God, changed the rest day, blessing the first day of the week where the 7th should be. And the Protestant world has taken this child of the papacy to be regarded as sacred. In the world of God, this is called fornication. God has a controversy with the churches of today. They are fulfilling the prophecy of John, which says all nations have drunk of the wine of wrath of her fornication. They have divorced themselves from God by refusing to receive his sign. They have not the Spirit of God's true commandment keeping people, and the people of God in giving their sanction to a false Sabbath, and in trampling under their feet the Sabbath of the Lord, have drunk of wine of the wrath of her fornication. So God is calling us to come out of those false teachings that have divorced us from his true holy writing instructions. Friends, another mighty angel, talking now of the second angel as I come to a close, was commissioned to descend to earth. Jesus placed in his hand a writing, and as he came to the earth he cried, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Then I saw the disappointed ones again raise their eyes to heaven, looking with faith and hope for their Lord's appearing. But many seemed to remain in a state as if asleep, yet I could see the trace of deep sorrow upon their countenances. The disappointed ones saw from the scriptures that they were in the tarrying time, and that they must patiently wait the fulfillment of vision, the same evidence which led them to look for their Lord in 1843, then led them to expect him in 1844. Yet the majority did not possess that energy which marked their faith in 1843. The disappointment had dampened their faith. I'm taking an extract from a writing that was speaking to the time of 1844 that I've already discussed, where there was a great disappointment when the Millerite movement was expecting Jesus to have come at that time. As the people of God united in the cry of the second angel, I just want to make a comparison. The heavenly hosts marked with the deepest interest the effect of the message, because during the great disappointment, many gave up and never again came back to the faith. They saw men who bore the name of Christians turn with scorn and derision upon those who had been disappointed. As the words fell from mocking lips, you remember the story of Elisha? You have not gone up yet. An angel wrote them, said the angel, they mock God. I was pointed back to a similar sin committed in ancient times. Elijah had been translated to heaven, and his mantle had fallen upon Elisha. Then the wicked youth, who had learned from their parents to despise the men of God, followed Elisha and mockingly cried out to him and said to him, go up, thou bald man, go up, thou bald head. In thus insulting his servant, they insulted God and met their punishment then and there. In a like manner, those who have scoffed and mocked at the idea of the saints going up will be visited with the wrath of God and will be made to feel that it is not a light thing to trifle with their Maker. Jesus commissioned other angels to fly quickly to revive and strengthen the drooping faith of his people and prepare them to understand the message of the second angel and the important move which was soon to be made in heaven. I saw these angels receive great power and light from Jesus and fly quickly to earth to fulfill their commission to aid the second angel in his work. So the work here is represented as being done by angels, but we know, you and I, as we've been going through this journey together, that we are not talking of literal angel, but we are talking of messengers that God sends to come and bring the light, to come and bring the truth. A great light shone upon the people of God as the angels cried, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then I saw those disappointed ones rise in harmony with the second angel, proclaim, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. The light from the angels penetrated the darkness everywhere. Satan and his angels sought to hinder this light from spreading and having its designed effect. They contended with the angels from heaven, telling them that God had deceived the people and that with all their light and power they could not make the world believe that Christ was coming again. But notwithstanding, Satan strove to edge up the way and draw the minds of the people from the light. The angels continued their work. Friends, you would remember that the revival that came back after the Dark Ages came about from a period that today we refer as the Reformation, because what was there was already destroyed by Papal Rome. After Papal Rome took away what God had said should be done in the Bible, the laws of God, and put the laws of men, and took away the commandments of God and put the commandments of men. After the period of 1,260 years, there was a great revival and reformation that happened, and making that restoration. And God is giving power again through the second angel message to tell the world that Babylon has been revealed. The system of falsehood has been revealed, that it was false. What has been taught to people was false. Now is the time to reveal that which was hidden in secret. It's unsealed. That's why the book of Revelation is called Revelation. It is an unsealed book. It's unsealing what was seemingly a mystery in the book of Daniel, the prophecies of Daniel. Now in Revelation, everything is laid bare for all to see, the secrets that were done, things that were done in secrets by Papal Rome and the Babylonian system over the years. God wants us to all be aware and to make the loud cry and make everyone aware of this truth, so that people, as God says, come out of fear, my people, come out of Babylon, come out of the Babylonian systems, Babylonian churches that are teaching false doctrines, making you drunk of the wrath of God that is going to come and visit you one day if you choose to remain on those systems or churches that do not follow the truth. I am not here telling you to leave the specific church and go to a specific church. Look for yourself in the Bible and study that find out for yourself which of God's churches follows the holy writings as they are written, and choose for yourself. Make a conscious decision led by the Holy Spirit. Those who received the light appeared very happy during that period. They looked steadfastly toward heaven and longed for the appearing of Jesus. Some were weeping and praying in great distress during that period. Those who rejected and opposed the light of the first angel's message lost the light of the second and could not be benefited by the power and glory which attended the message. Behold, the bridegroom coming. Jesus turned from them with a frown, for they had slighted and rejected him. Those who received the message were wrapped in a cloud of glory. They gratefully feared to offend God and waited and watched, prayed to know his will. Friends, there is much info that I could share that I have for my reading today, but I will choose to end here and say to us, the second angel's message to me is so wonderful, it's so beautiful, because it is a message of a warning that tells us of the false systems in the world, false religious systems, and we have noted who is the head of those false churches, false religious systems. It is the devil himself. So when you read in Bible prophecy about Babylon, now you know you are not talking about literal Babylon, which was originally in Iraq, in the country of Iraq, because it doesn't exist. In prophecy, God did say that that city will not be inhabited again, and it is not. This is a lesson for us that one day this Babylonian system will not exist anymore, because there's coming a day when the sin and the sinners and the originator of sin will be destroyed, just like Babylon, and they will not exist again. Choose you this day whom you worship. I and my house will choose the Lord. May God bless you. Amen.